Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter, springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, joined with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided.
morning, Crosspointe, and happy Mother's Day to you, wherever you are. I want to say a special happy Mother's Day to my own mom, Julie, in Athens, Alabama. Hi, Mom. I hope you are able to be with your mother today. And moms, I hope you are able to be with one or more of your kids and grandkids. And if that is the case, I hope that you can fully be present and soak it in, all the beauty, all the potential awkwardness, all of it. And as we often do on Mother's Day, I want to take some extra time and acknowledge that Mother's Day can also bring up negative feelings and painful emotions for a lot of us as well. Maybe you've lost your mother. Maybe you have lost a child. Maybe you desperately want to be a mother and those prayers have gone unanswered year after year. Maybe you have no interest in being a mother and our society's focus on one traditional view of family can tend to make you feel othered and make you wonder if your contributions, even mother-like contributions, are even noticed or valued. Maybe Mother's Day is hard for you because your mother was just not good at being a mother. So many names and faces pop up in my mind as I say these words, and I just want you to know that I hold you in my heart. So whether I know you or not, whether you are experiencing today your greatest joy or your deepest pain, I want to offer this prayer for you, written by Amy Young and adapted by Heidi Carrington Heath. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you are like Tamar, struggling with infertility or a miscarriage. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if you are like Rachel, counting the women among your family and friends who year by year and month by month get pregnant while you wait. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you are like Naomi and have known the bitter sting of a child's death. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you're like Joseph and Benjamin and your mom has died. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if your relationship with your mom was marked by trauma, abuse, or abandonment, or she just couldn't parent you the way that you needed. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you've been like Moses' mother and put a child up for adoption, trusting another family to love your child into adulthood. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you've been like Pharaoh's daughter, called to love children who are not yours by birth, and thus the mother who brought that child into your life, even if it's complicated. I want you to know I'm praying for you if you, like many, are watching or have watched your mother age and disappear into the long goodbye of dementia. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if, like Mary, you are pregnant for the very first time and waiting breathlessly for the miracle of your first child. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if your children have turned away from you, painfully closing the door on relationship, leaving you holding your broken heart in your hands. And like Hagar, now you are mothering alone. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if motherhood is your greatest joy and toughest struggle all rolled into one. I want you to know that I'm praying for you if you are watching your child battle substance abuse, a public legal situation, mental illness, or another situation which you can merely watch unfold. I want you to know that I am praying for you if you, like so many before you, do not wish to be a mother, or are not married, or in so many other ways do not fit into societal norms. I want you to know that I am praying for you if you see yourself reflected in all or none of these stories. This Mother's Day, wherever and whoever you are, we walk with you. You are loved, you are seen, you are worthy. And may you know the deep love without end of our wild, beautiful Mother God. Amen.
arms of a mother, holding her daughter, guiding her son. Beautiful love, the strength of a woman, birthing her children and bearing their pain. Every breath that you breathe, every song that you sing, strong and gentle, wild and controlled. Every move makes a sound, every tear feeds the ground. Strong and gentle, beautiful love, beautiful love, with eyes full of comfort, and hands that have nurtured. House is our home, beautiful love, dressed in all wisdom, all God and all human, all light and all love. Every breath that you breathe, every song that you sing, strong and gentle, wild and controlled. Every move makes a sound, every tear feeds the ground. Strong and gentle, beautiful love. Strong and gentle, beautiful love. Strong and gentle, beautiful love.
Good morning, everybody. I want to let you know about a couple things and a couple ways that you can get involved at Crosspointe. First, in just a few weeks, Roasted and Toasted, the coffee shop that is in our building, is going to be moving out, and we are in need of some people who would be interested in helping us with coffee on Sunday mornings. That would be getting here a little bit early, making the coffee and making sure it's flowing while people are here on Sunday mornings. If you're interested in that, you can find out more at crosspointe.org/volunteer. You'll see a volunteer sign-up form there, and you can find out more. Second, as always, if you would like to contribute to what we're doing financially at Crosspointe, you can go to crosspointe.org/contribute, and you can see all of the ways that you can contribute there. Any other information you'd like to know about, you can go to crosspointe.org and let us know what you're looking for. All right, so happy Mother's Day. One of my favorite mothers in the world was my grandmother, Griffin. She was a tiny woman. She was barely 5 feet tall, and my grandfather was about 6'6", so they made quite a pair. And my grandmother was someone who, it didn't matter what time of day it was, what time of night it was, you were welcome at her table for a cup of coffee, for a glass of milk, for something to eat. I ate a lot of SpaghettiOs and chocolate chip cookies at her table. Now, she did have a fancy dining room table with the tall back chairs, with the candelabras, with the big chandelier, but I only remember eating there on Thanksgiving. The time that I remember most that you wanted time with Grandma Griffin was you sat at her kitchen table. It was light brown, it was chipped, it was stained, and it sat right in front of this huge window where we could look out, we could see my grandfather's garden, we could see the birds and the squirrels. My grandmother hosted lots of people at that table. Famous people, wealthy people, prominent figures in the community. She hosted friends, she hosted neighbors, she hosted strangers, young, old, it didn't matter who you were. When you were at that table, you were all at the same level of importance in the eyes of my grandmother. Everyone got special treatment there. Everyone always talked about what a servant my grandmother was, and she was definitely that. She was the first to offer to do the dishes, to offer to drive you to the doctor, but that's not what I remember most about her. I remember her table. I remember that when you sat there, you were allowed to be yourself. There was no pretending. And you felt that no matter what was happening away from that table and from that moment, you were going to be okay. Your voice was listened to, and you were, just for a few moments, the most important person in the world. Now, there are two women in the Bible that my grandmother was often compared to. Mary and Martha were two sisters who are referenced a few times in the gospel narratives about Jesus. No one knows the exact identities of these women. There's lots of speculation, but we do know that they were sisters, that they had a brother named Lazarus, who we're told later that Jesus raised from the dead. We know that these women were considered myrrh bearers, women who attended Jesus' body after his death. We also know that they were likely among the first to see Jesus after his resurrection. And from what we can gather through the few verses we have and from Christian tradition, it seems that they were also pretty prominent figures in the ministry of Jesus. Some traditions record them as being a missionary pair, traveling in the same way that we hear about Paul and Barnabas, about Priscilla and Aquila, meaning that they traveled together. They taught, they preached, they served the community, they gave baptism, and they offered communion. There's just 5 short verses in the book of Luke, chapter 10, that have for the most part formed the foundation for how us Western Protestants have come to know and understand these two women. And these verses are found in Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. Now, as they went on their way, he, meaning Jesus, entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her ministering, by her work, by her serving. So she came to him, to Jesus, and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the ministering, all the work, all the serving by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen what is good, which will not be taken away from her." So one can look at these verses and determine that Martha's in the doghouse, Mary is the hero, Martha's the complainer, and Mary is the wise one. And it can also seem that Jesus is condemning what Martha is doing, and that Jesus expected all of his true followers to look and act just like Mary. But that doesn't track with what we know about Jesus. In this gospel and other gospels, Jesus was not acting as an enforcer of women's cultural roles here. He was neither condemning nor condoning Martha's serving. Jesus wasn't offering some veiled commentary about a woman's role being barefoot in the kitchen, or that women belong at men's feet. He also doesn't shame Martha for her comment, for her complaint. At the very least, Jesus is arguing for women to come out of the kitchen and into traditional male space. And if we take this interpretation seriously, which is rarely done, then we should actually be reaffirming and encouraging women's religious and theological education and contributions, and not offering up any more shallow publications that masquerade as women's Bible studies. Soapbox done. In these 5 short verses, everything that we already have in our minds about women, where women belong, and about what disciples of Jesus look like is blown up and it's recreated. What does it look like here? First, Mary chose to go against traditional women's roles for that time when she sat herself down at the feet of Jesus. In a culture where actions were weighed on the scale of honor and shame, a woman sitting herself at the feet of a man, particularly a teacher, would have been viewed as shameful, not just for the woman, but for the entire family. Women did not belong in this position, and they certainly didn't place themselves there. Mary didn't explain herself. She didn't make excuses as to why she did not choose to assist her sister. She becomes a silent protester. She knew she had the right, if not a cultural one, then a spiritual one, to sit at the feet of Jesus and to learn and to listen, just as the male disciples did. She had seen Jesus' interactions and acceptance of those society had viewed as second class. When Mary publicly balked the traditional woman's role, her sitting at Jesus' feet, it wasn't an act of subordination to the men in the room. Her taking the posture of a student was a statement of both equality and a willingness and a desire to learn. And Jesus supported Mary's decision. He also does not offer shame or explanation. He simply told her sister, Mary has chosen what is good, and it will not be taken from her. His acceptance of Mary is a radical cultural statement. He has accepted Mary's personal agency and choice, and he's called it good. Second, when we look closer at the language and the context, we see Martha is also outside the traditional woman's role. When Martha welcomed Jesus and the boys into her home, notice it's referred to as her home, she's stepping into a traditionally male role. Welcoming someone into the home was something that the patriarch would typically do. We don't know why Martha takes on this role. Perhaps there wasn't a male present. Perhaps she did this all the time and it wasn't surprising. Perhaps she and her sister lived alone. But what is more important here are all of the things that are not said by Jesus and the male disciples. No one seems to have a problem with Martha in this position. No one calls her out for being outside an assigned role. No one shames her for opening the door. And if Jesus has had a problem with Martha in this role, the author surely would have written it down. What we can continue to untangle here is that Martha isn't acting as a passive servant. She's not a waitress in the kitchen. In most traditional translations, because they have been for the most part translated during periods of very defined domestic roles for women, the English is translated as this: Martha was distracted by her many preparations, or Martha was distracted by her many tasks. Our minds automatically fill in those blanks, and we want to create a picture of what tasks and preparations are familiar to us. That's why all the Sunday school materials show Martha with a mixing bowl and a spatula or near a hot stove, right? And we won't even address all the white Jesuses in the pictures. We know that he was a Middle Eastern man, right? The text gives us a deeper clue as to what's really going on. The word many preparations or tasks is the Greek word diakonos. Diakonos, diakonia, all throughout this book and well established in the community of Jesus followers by this time, had been translated up to this point as service or ministry. And it's not until we get to this part of the book that the translators fail to translate it in the same way. Diakonia is not Martha cooking in the kitchen, although she may have very well made a snack for her guests and acted as a really great hostess. Martha was ministering like the disciples had been. She was busy doing the work of a disciple in the community. And like the male disciples, this indicates that Martha's primary focus hadn't been on things in the home. Not that that's a problem, but that wasn't her focus. But rather, like the male disciples, she'd been preaching. She'd been teaching about Jesus. She'd been tending the sick. She'd been setting the captives free. She'd been listening to the stories, wiping away tears, probably feeding them too. This diakonos is well established as something that both men and women did. And it has nothing, or at least very little, to do with the kitchen. Traveling missionaries like Jesus, and probably Mary and Martha, depended on local houses and hospitality of fellow followers for places to stay while they were traveling. This is likely what Jesus and the men were doing here. And Martha isn't upset because Mary isn't helping her with the dishes. Both women were deacons. They were servers, they were ministers in the ministry of Jesus. They were hard workers. Martha's upset because Mary has stopped physical service for Jesus in exchange for contemplative learning. And I want to take just a quick side note because I find it fascinating. The books of Luke and Acts are believed to have the same author. And in the book of Acts, chapter 6, the disciples are approached by a group of believers who are complaining that their widows were being neglected. And the disciples basically tell the men, it's not right that we should neglect the word of God in order to wait on tables. Translated, literally, it is not right for us to neglect kataleapeo, or leave the word of God, the logos, in order to serve, in order to diakoneo. Martha says the opposite to Jesus in the book before. Remember, written by the same author. Martha says, Jesus, don't you care that my sister has neglected kataleapo, or left me to do all the serving, all the diakoneo, in order to listen to the logos? Mary here is acting more like the disciples in the book of Acts, studying, not serving. And Martha is presenting this idea that they should all be doing both. I think that's fascinating, that switch of words. And we have to be careful here not to put words in Jesus' mouth. When Martha comes out and complains that Mary is sitting and not working, or listening and not working, Jesus doesn't get involved in the sibling rivalry. He rarely does that. There are multiple instances in the Bible when Jesus is asked to take sides. There's the brothers James and John who ask him to choose between them. But Jesus isn't allowing this conversation to become a weapon or an episode for combat between two of his important followers. Jesus says Mary's chosen the better way. But again, we need to look for what is not said here. Jesus did not tell Martha, Mary's chosen the better way, and you, Martha, should stop what you're doing and sit at his feet too. He didn't tell Martha that diakonos was a waste of time and an embarrassment. Jesus had issue with Martha because Martha is trying to take choice away from Mary. Mary and Martha lived in a world where, as women, most choices were made for them. They had very little personal agency. And it seems that these were women who had somehow managed to live countercultural lives within the ministry of Jesus. And when Martha complained to Jesus about Mary's decision, she was essentially trying to take away Mary's choice and replace it with her own. Martha was trying to make her choice Mary's choice. Martha was trying to make her thing Mary's thing. And Jesus said, like he often did, no, let me show you a better way. There doesn't have to be one way. Christian tradition teaches that these two sisters show us different ways of following Christ. Martha's the active one, Mary is the contemplative one. I think that's a bit too simplistic, but it is nice to see the two sides. Both of these women were later made saints in various Christian traditions. One tradition says that they fled to Cyprus with their brother Lazarus because of persecution, and that they preached and they served the community and they were loved and they were viewed as authoritative. Others talk about the miracles and the preaching that the women did. There's one legend that says the sisters and their brother had noble lineage, that they owned a castle, that they gave it up when they began preaching and teaching for Christ, and they fed the poor. There's even a story of Martha saving Mary from a dragon who terrorized a small southern French village where it's believed that they died and they're buried. The story goes that there was this dragon between two villages that wasn't allowing anyone to pass. Martha tamed the dragon, saved everyone, and walked the dragon through the village. There's stories like this a lot about Mary and Martha. But the point being that these were not obscure, insignificant women. This is not a story simply about the best way to serve Christ. These women were heroes of the Jesus-following Christian community. And all we have left, really, are a few verses to interpret centuries later. Who knows if they actually fought dragons or stopped floods or owned a castle? Regardless, the stories left for us show that these women were known and loved and considered important to communities. These were women with deeply complicated lives. And these were women who had chosen life paths that were both unique and impactful for them and for others. Jesus simply reminds Martha that each sister has chosen the best way for them. Jesus gave them both personal agency. Jesus acted in an emancipatory way that reminded both women that they were free to make their own choices in a world that did not offer them that freedom. Jesus honoring Mary's choice was also honoring the freedom that Martha had to make a different choice. Martha and Mary are empowered women in this story. Mary chooses a path different than Martha. Martha saw it as an affront to her choice, but Jesus doesn't let her get away with it. How many times and in how many ways do we do this today in our own lives? How often do we try to make our way the way? Not to put ladies on the spot, but to put ladies on the spot. We do this a lot. Mean girls, bullies are common tropes. They're memes. Cutting other women down because of their differences, is a poison that we have all doled out at some time or another. And today, of all days in the year, tends to be a day of comparison. Who's the better mother? Who's the better woman? A focus on things we wish we could change about ourselves. This is not the way. And we have the power to be countercultural as well and to put a stop to this kind of thinking and acting and to celebrate the choices of everyone. And regardless, all of us, regardless of gender status, age, anything, how often have we tried to make our experience the standard by which everyone else should measure their own success? Or we may feel that because someone did not choose in the same way that we did, that means they're in opposition to our choice. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. Perhaps this is the need to be seen, to be viewed as relevant, to be affirmed. I do this to our kids all the time by putting pressure on them to follow in our footsteps or to get a job that will pay more money than will be personally fulfilling. What really makes a fulfilling life? Is it just because it's been fulfilling to us doesn't mean that it's going to be fulfilling to someone else? Martha misunderstood that. Just because her path was fulfilling to her didn't mean it was going to be the path for everyone. And as if we didn't live in a world where things are incredibly nuanced and complicated already, we also do this to ourselves when we fall into the comparison trap, into believing that there is a standard American dream that we all must aspire to. what is that exactly? It's a standard by which we have been consumed. And when we see others brave enough to do something different, sometimes we just think they're incorrect instead of celebrating their pathfinding. We also do that in our hidden biases without even realizing it. We often believe ourselves and our ways to be the standard by which all else should be measured. Everyone else is welcome to their own journey. It's actually not until their journey aligns with ours and our expectations that they finally reach their potential. This is the foundation for all of the isms and the phobias. Racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, homophobia, xenophobia, we could go on and on. These are the foundations of the fear in the other. The fear not just of the unknown, but that somehow someone's different path is a statement against ours. I used to think I was such a failure because I could not live up to the person my grandmother was. But you know what? I wasn't made to be my grandmother. I was made to be me. God has given me my path. And although I've been influenced and shaped and inspired by the person my grandmother was, I'm not expected to be her because that's not my path. And that's not who I was created to be. And if I'm honest, she never expected that from me either. Jesus, God, the divine, is not surprised by our independence, nor are they threatened by our differences, and neither should we be. Differences are not a threat to us. They are a testament to the unbelievable kaleidoscope of creativity of the Creator. We also have to recognize that we live in a world where so many individuals still do not have the privilege of agency and choice. We live in a country, in a world where wealth and background and race determine where you start out, they determine your opportunities, and too often they determine where you'll end up. And we should be a people who participate in changing that. Now, is this to say that there's nothing universal that we can grasp onto? Anything goes. Everyone just chooses a path and goes for it. Where are the lines, you ask? Where are the guardrails? That's not what I'm saying at all. There is a thread seen throughout the Bible, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, stated in stories, in sermons, in prophecies, spoken by Jesus and the early Christian leaders, exemplified in the lives of so many. It's the universal mandate that connects us all regardless of our path, spoken about more than anything else in the Bible. It's found in Micah 6:8. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. It's spoken by Jesus. Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself, release the captives, help the poor. It's written about by Paul. Think of others before you think of yourself. Justice and love are in the same family, and they are the overarching themes that run from cover to cover, from birth to death. And that is the standard, whatever our path. So if whatever path you're on, whatever unique way you've been given or chosen, if you are participating in making your corner of the world a better place through love, of self and of others, and seeking the justice of others, then stop worrying how much your life looks like someone else's. Or more than that, stop thinking that we need to make other people's lives and choices look like ours, as if that's some sort of confirmation that we're doing things correctly because they're doing it like us. That's the starting and the ending point for all journeys. It's love and justice. Take a moment and look at your hand. Notice the shape. Notice the lines. Notice the fingerprints. Notice the texture of your skin, your freckles, your scars, the lines on your knuckles, the miracle of the way that your fingers bend, how it feels, how you move, injuries you might have. There are billions of hands around the world, but what you're looking at is unique. There's not another like it. It's also something shared by most people in the world, but it's not identical. It doesn't have to be. It's not supposed to be. Let us remind ourselves of this every day. Let us be people who refuse to insist that everyone is like us or chooses like us. Let us be people who refuse to take agency and choice from others. Let us be people who celebrate the paths of others, even when it's not our path. Let us be people who recognize difference as an amazing representation of who our incredible, creative God is in our world. Let us be followers of that way. Have a great week at Crosspointe.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.